So good evening. My name is Karlyn. I am a holistic wellness practitioner. And this is Tanesha Nobles. I'm a mental health psychiatric nurse practitioner. This is another webinar event discussion masterclass that we wanted to bring to everyone online. It's about mental health and public service workers. And all the ways that you can manage that from the employee aspect and from a manager supervisor position aspect as well.
Yes, I'm Tanesha Nobles. As Karlyn mentioned, I am a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and I absolutely adore being on these videos and presenting and also discussing and learning from everyone who joins. And I definitely want to say thank you for your time. And we look forward to any questions or topics that you bring up during this discussion as well. We definitely want to um, learn more about how to take care of ourselves and others, especially in the workplace. Most of us are not at a place where we don't work outside of our homes, and being in the presence and being around other people sometimes can add unnecessary and unwarranted stress. And knowing how to approach those situations is important. Many people now who have been working at home for a very long time, they're now having to go back to their employer in a building that's away from home. So, yep. So this is one of those conversations that actually applies in almost every setting when you don't work at home. So.
And definitely this month of May, there's a lot of holidays and special weeks, so it just felt fitting. There's Teachers Appreciation Week and Nurses Week and Memorial Weekend and all these different public service industries. So we just wanted to highlight that, and we thought this would be like a great way just to honor everybody in the work that we do and they do as well. So again, Tisha, you want to go?
So my main I love adult mental wellness, and I recently became a child and adolescent psychiatry professional as well. So it's interesting to see how much happens during childhood that spawns and reverberates into adulthood. So I think these conversations are very important because some of us, including myself, um, didn't realize different coping strategies that we've learned, over the years. So, but yes, I love anything education, anything mental wellness, holistic health, and education for our community. So,
Yes. And even though my primary is background is acute care, or I work mostly in a hospital, I do as well love to venture out into the holistic wellness space as well. And that just encompasses everything, your mental, emotional, physical well-being, and definitely making that a forefront for our community and just letting it, having the resources and education to provide to them. So we definitely both come from that background of wanting to just share our knowledge with everyone. So I hope that you guys are able to get something out of this. I know even myself got just a couple more tools for my toolkit to help with those stressful shifts. So um, we'll get started. So again, welcome. This is for everyone, but we really want to put an emphasis on our mental health and those in healthcare and different public service professions during this webinar. We want to have some discussion, so please feel free to um, chat in the chat boxes and put any questions again in there. But we want to talk about burnout and the definitions and any symptoms and management of that, different coping strategies, instinctual and recommended strategies, tips for managing burnout for individuals and for organizations and PTSD and management. And we really chose to focus mostly on burnout and PTSD just because a lot of the other conditions, as we'll mention later, tend to have a similar causes and management styles. So we just really wanted to specify these two in our webinar, but we can also talk about all conditions and any mental health disorders if you guys have questions or want more information on it. So this is just a little quick infographic that I found, but it basically says like just talks about 1 in 3 people say that their mental health has suffered because of work in this past year. And it really just talks about how employers and employees both see the benefit of having mental health and well-being training and resources and how it affects the workplace, the more mental health resources that are available, they see a more positive shift in the workplace. Also, just by investing $1 in the mental health, in the employee's mental health, it yields a $4 return. So not only is it good for the employees and the employer in the actual working environment, it's also good economically as well and financially. So this is just a little tidbit of that. So as far as worst jobs for mental health, like we said, a lot of it is public service employees, healthcare, people that work in healthcare, social work services, definitely teachers, law enforcement, people that work in the food industry, sales, the creative arts, writers, artists, actors, all the above, unless you're upper echelon, you're not making that much money in the arts. Financial advisors, people that work in manufacturing jobs, different transport sectors, public versus and private, and military. And the reason I put military with a little star is a lot of the research shows that most of the times people in military see the risk for mental health disorders and needing for coping mechanisms during times of war. Sometimes when there's no war, they haven't been through those different combat times. They don't see the same trajectory as you would if they were in active war. So there's a little caveat to that. Now, can anybody tell me why that these jobs typically have a higher increase in mental health disorders or substance use, anything like that? And you can drop it in the chat if you have any suggestions or reasons why that these jobs tend to have higher mental health issues.
Well, I don't do a lot of chatting,
Oh,
but I know if you work in sales or some of those occupations that you mentioned that was written, you're dealing with people. And anytime you're dealing with people, there's a lot of stress on you.
yeah, that's definitely people working with people, different personalities. Definitely can bring on stress. Anybody else have anything else to add or any experiences of why you may felt having stress related to work?
Trying to meet a deadline. You're trying to meet this deadline, and you're probably overworked a little bit, and you're staying up late, and so just trying to meet a deadline imposed on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh,
It's school too, right? In school, that's trying to make a deadline for school.
yes.
That bothers. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Thank you. So yeah, so factors affecting mental health in the workplace. Like you stated, the hours, especially us as nurses or law enforcement, you're working 12 hours, 24-hour shifts on call, so you're not really getting good sleep hygiene, the unmanageable workloads, the stress of workloads, as you said, deadlines, trying to meet these unattainable deadlines, stress, working with people, different personalities. Sometimes there's a lack of support, whether that's from the organization or just maybe you're alone if you're out at war. Um, and just high pressure, like in finance, there's a lot of stress with, financing a lot of people's, and being in charge of other people's money. And definitely for us teachers and other public service jobs, there's low wages, right? So if you're doing volunteer work or teaching or social work, there's not a lot of money in that. So there's financial stress on top of it. So there's a lot of factors that affect the mental health in regards to industry wise. And some common workplace related mental health conditions, you're going to have burnout, stress, anxiety, PTSD, depression, substance use disorders, suicidal ideations, attempts. So all these all can increase depending on the type of job and industry that you're in. If you're seeing a lot of traumatic events, that's just working in law enforcement, or maybe you're a nurse in a prison, you're going to see a lot of different things that can impact you daily. So these are definitely some of the more common conditions that we see and deal with ourselves. Tanesha.
Yes, definitely. I could chime in and say that one reason you ask why is I know for most public service employees and healthcare employees, and even community service employees or um, public figures, is a lot of giving. And that is a thing in itself when people often come to you for anything, on a regular basis, especially when you have things going on in your own life, personally, and you're the person who, needs to be at the forefront of giving, whether it's a parent, I see, obviously a pastor, a nurse, like people are a social worker, like you're always fixing other people's problems. And it's just, it can be mentally and emotionally taxing. And I don't think that people, even though we know it, I still don't think that the gravity of what it takes to really take on that on a regular basis and still maintain and perform at a level of what we call normalcy. Especially again, when you're not feeling your best, or when you're not feeling amazing, to have several people throughout a 12-hour shift, or throughout a week, or even a day as a social worker or care manager, to have that much required of you, so that would be my why for sure. But burnout is literally the negative outcome. And what burnout is exactly, as a one definition by the World Health Organization, it is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And I think that goes back to what I was just saying. So when do we have time to manage it if you're going 12-hour, 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 and especially if you're working nights and then you're sleeping the next day, and then you go into the post office, you're doing deadlines for whatever for school. I'm doing homework. You got a meal prep or whatever you're doing, grocery shop, pay a couple of whatever, cell phone bill, whatever the case, and then it's 3 more shifts. So when do you really manage that? So that's literally how burnout happens. And it goes on and on and sometimes even unrecognized, because you don't even realize it, because you're just going on and on and on. I know we did it all the time. Remember when we were working nights, and it was like, it's like, what? And so that's one thing, is to understand and be aware of what burnout is, and then to recognize it, and then know that, okay, I'm snappy and I'm hungry and I'm, malnutrition and I'm sleep deprived and I'm, just not well, emotionally, I'm just not well. And to have that status and then have everybody else asking for things, just, yeah, it's a conundrum for just chaos. And then people start to feel bad about themselves because of their reaction and they snapped at their wife or they were short with their child or whatever the case, and you look back and go like, man, that was mean. But and it was just a result of everything that you have going on and the inability to take a second and just go like, okay, one thing at a time, and what is the priority. um and to have these tools that Karlyn was just talking about earlier that you can refer to in the moment, because all of this sounds really easy to do when we're talking about it right now and nothing's on fire. You're right. Like nothing is on fire behind me. But in the moment, like you may not have a water hose right in your hand and there's a fire right in front of you. So you got to figure out something else. And that's what coping strategies are. Some of the ones that were recommended when I did some research to compile the slides I contributed were being productive. So I know at work, your role and what you're doing, and it starts to become monotonous, obviously afterward. But to find a way to stand out, and I do mean to yourself, not outwardly trying to impress someone else, but just being productive to a point where you feel productive. Like you have to define like, what am I even doing here? Like how does my presence here even make a difference? And what does my contribution matter? Like how much does it matter? So finding a way to be productive in a measurable, effective way that's not conceptual. Like I'm a nurse, of course, I give medicine, I take vital signs, I assist patients, whatever. But what is that? How do I personally define my productivity? So that's one way, as well as physical activity. So any depression, any anxiety, self-defeating thoughts, movement is literally the answer. And I know that again sounds really easy in this conversation, but when you're feeling it, it's not always easy to just like stand up and do a cartwheel. Like who's doing that in the office?
Yeah.
But to find a way, whatever works for you. And I think that's also a thing, is finding new ways to address old problems, because obviously if the old answers aren't working, it warrants a new approach. So physical activity, whatever that is, taking a walk outside just to see like a different environment. I know a lot of it sounds very trivial until you do it and you find what works for you. And you're like, oh, who would have thought this? Just doing that actually took me out of the mind frame of I'm about to go a gasket right now. But spending more leisure time. So I know, and I always, often, I'll say, oh, often, not always, come from a place of nursing, because once a nurse, always a nurse. But as nurses and caregivers, most of the time, our work is, it's very, so when you go home, sometimes you do think about like what you still could have done or you did, or what you probably need to do the next day. So I think a lot of the leisure is not as leisure. I don't think that I think sleep and, the usual family time. What I mean by that is just your average going home and dinner and, television time or whatever the case is, and homework or however your normalcy looks is leisure, which that's not leisure because it's scheduled, it's structured. So I don't think that we often get leisure time where you're unplugged, you're not on social media, you're not, having to think fully into the next moment or the next day, and you're actually in the moment. I don't think that a lot of us get that or prioritize that. So finding time to actually not be anywhere but where you are, not anything. Whatever your child is saying, you are fully engulfed. Whatever your wife is saying, you are fully present. Whatever, you're watching on television, you're fully engaged and being entertained, or whatever you're reading, a self-help or whatever the case, you're being fully endowed by whatever the presentation is. So that is leisure, traveling, doing whatever it is you do, golfing, whatever it is. But spending more time actually doing that when you're not at work versus your regular. Because I know for me, it's sad that I think that leisure is sleep and is on the couch. And it's like, what? Like that can't be, that
Yeah.
can't be leisure. How? So that I think is something that I'm working on, being more thoughtful about what I do for leisure versus like I went and took a walk today just to get outside and do the thing I'm telling everyone else and taking my own advice, the physical activity. And it's amazing that for me that definitely helps. The smell of what someone was saying, fresh cut grass or cutting the grass, just the smells and the senses, the birds and the the plants and how things are all new again because it's spring. But just spending time doing those things versus like I'm just gonna lay here, I'm just gonna take a nap, you know. And then forward future thinking. So we have to do what it is we've signed up to do, whether it's parenting, whether it's being a nurse, a practitioner, owning our own business, being a shepherd over God's people. But where does the now take you? Where is it taking you? And I think understanding that in the moment of frustration and finding out, okay, like, so why am I even really doing this? Like, what is the impact of me getting in control of the situation now within myself to be able to handle it? How does that move me into the future? And what does the future of me look like if I do or don't get this situation together, if I do or don't think my way through it? I think that's a real question for times when you're feeling like, yeah, I'm not sure how this is going to work out because I'm just sick of the whole thing and I just want to, not deal with it at all. It's too much. I think everybody's felt that. And the next one says mentorship or colleague relationship. I know plenty of times when I just thought it was ridiculous being on a shift, I would go to Karlyn and be like, girl, so it was like you seeing this too, right? Like we both seeing this, right? This is crazy. So I think having someone, and not to say that you're emotionally dumping, because I think that's dangerous, but in a healthy way to go to somebody and just make sure that you're not being unrealistic and that this is crazy. And I need to figure out either a plan B or an exit strategy, or I need to regroup within myself, but then a mentorship as well. If you're a mentor and you're feeling burnout, I think bringing it back to what you need, number one, to be your best self and to unload in order for the person you're mentoring to get the best of you and to be able to see how that works and to be very transparent about that. And then if you're the mentee, going to your mentor to find out, okay, how did you do? Because I know this isn't new. Like most people have felt it and have gotten to a point where it's just a brick wall. Everything is heavy, everything is hard, everything is just difficult and it's frustrating. And so to have those relationships to lean into during those times is very helpful. And I think those are some of the underrated options to burnout and stress. Is a lot of times people isolate or they just don't, everything's too much. So it's easier to just be quiet and to yourself and just deal with it. So, and then taking structured breaks. So again, if you are in a building at an employer and you're able to think through your day, I think it is important to, if you're doing 12 hours, which is incredible. I don't know who came up with that, but by 10 o'clock, I'm going to use the restroom. That is a sad thing to have to tell yourself, but it's a real thing when you're a nurse.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Like you telling me you got to structure taking a restroom break? Yes, because between the time you got there at 7 and 10 o'clock, that's 3 hours that you didn't drink water. You didn't take your vitamins. You didn't go to the restroom. You didn't, floss after you did eat your breakfast. You ate your breakfast in like 10 minutes. Like it's insane. So the work flow does not support what we're talking about. So you have to like then step in and go like, okay, how am I going to make this work for me? Because I'm a nurse and I'm trying to give 100% when I'm here. We tried to do, oh, you got to turn every 2 hours. You got to, give the med within 30 minutes to an hour. You got to,
All these
sign off on
different,
a, yes, you got to sign off on if the patient has a ticket to ride and make sure that the patient is unhooked. It was just on and on and on. And then by the time you get to 10 o'clock, you've done a lot of that stuff.
Mhm.
And you still have like, 7 more hours to go with a 30-minute break.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to do. And I can't even imagine other areas of professional, public, and community service employees and people who are in positions like, as I mentioned before, like a person who's, a parent full time, I can't even imagine, or a pastor full time. That's, a lot more to it than what I'm saying, because I get to go home and people are
Mhm.
not calling me at home,
Exactly.
But parents and pastors, you got a whole open door policy. They can come and go and say, please, usually. So, but yeah, those are just some of the coping strategies, yeah, that I wanted to share in this slide. And then the next one, so instinctually, I mentioned before, negative thinking. The first thought is, this is crazy. Why am I even doing this? And what? It's, the first thoughts are not usually like, yeah, I'm
The healthiest. Yeah.
like, this is making me be the most healthy nurse. I'm going to be the most well-rounded nurse. You're not thinking that. Normally, you're thinking like, okay, I'm about to find another job.
Quitting.
This is crazy. So the negative thinking is usually instinctual as well as self-defeating, because it is also very true that most jobs can make you feel inadequate even when you're not, or most positions, not feeling like you're meeting the target effort and the target expectations on a job or in a position can make you feel defeated. I know, as a new practitioner, we come into it knowing things, but to apply those things and they don't necessarily fit every time, is a really great example of like, okay, am I really, who I thought I was? So you have to figure out, okay, this is instinctual. Like, of course, that's a thought, but then what your second thought is more important than what your first thought is, because then you have to figure out how to think through that and identify like, okay, that's what this is. I get it. And no, I'm here for a reason. And think through it versus reacting with the negative thinking and the self-defeating thoughts. And then you can become confrontational or unapproachable. After being on a job or in a position for, 10, 20 years, Karlyn and I have been nurses for quite a while. So you can become very stale, is my word. And I just made that up, but you can
Hate it.
become very,
Mhm.
yes, like just unapproachable. And you can tell those people who've been in those jobs for a long time. You go to the DMV and they're just like, next. Like they have no chill when it comes to like customer service. They're not caring about how your day is going.
Mhm.
It's that is a super sign of burnout, and like you're over it. You should definitely go home. But being confrontational with coworkers, you've taken it, the unmanageable workload, the passive aggressiveness, the microaggressive behaviors in your employer, in your workplace. And all of a sudden, after doing that for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the next thing she say to me is going to be, and you start to get into you start to get into that, and that's just not healthy.
Mhm.
So, or you do the opposite and you become avoidant, and you're eating lunch in your cubicle, you paying your bills in your cubicle, you're looking for another job in your cubicle. You're doing everything right there. You don't want to move. You don't even want to use a restroom. 6 hours pass and you don't even want to see these people. You just hold it until you're ready to go home. So it just and then unintentional projecting. You go home and then you project at home. You're in traffic and you project in traffic.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that just burnout will do it. And you see that I see it in Atlanta all the time. The traffic is insane. And then you have these people who are completely burnt out, stressed out, and they're in traffic with me. Well, I don't usually go the freeway, but typically you'll see it on the news. All the ones you see on the news, it's usually an undertow of something that we're talking about or we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
It's the PTSD that you see on the freeway. So those are the instinctual reactions versus thinking through. The recommended strategies are thinking through tough situations versus reacting, and sometimes using those outside objective or more objective perspectives from people. Like I said, I would go to Karlyn and be like, girl, get help, ask for help. Finding the positives about the workplace. Why did you even apply here in the first place? It was NYU. You knew it was a top hospital. You knew that it could connect you with people who we would be doing Zoom and teaching people about PTSD, 5 years later, 7 years later. So, think about those positive things and use those things to then develop a positive. You can always do that. I mean, in any way, it could be as small as, I'm gonna find a better parking spot tomorrow. It can be that simple. Identify how it shapes your goals. Why did you apply for this job in the first place? This job gave me the ability to, further my education. It paid off my student loans. Find why you even went here in the first place and figure out how that shapes you to your next happy place, if this is no longer your happy place.
Right.
Think about how you navigated similar events before. Every situation you faced in your life, unless it's the unique ones, and we don't have to mention those like death and, car accidents, but I'm talking about interpersonal events. They've typically happened in a similar instance. You've gotten into it with people before. You've disagreed with people before. People have asked you unimaginable things before. How did you navigate it before? And if you never had it happen before, that's where you get a mentor or you have a collaborator or a colleague and you say, girl, or listen, man, I'm having this whole situation and I've never dealt with it before. And it's taking a toll on me because I've tried this and this and this. What are your thoughts? How have you dealt with this before? Use your resources and your network. Incorporate prayer and mindfulness. We talk about this quite often because it pulls you back into yourself. When things are going on around us, it's easy to react because that's our reality. But in order to do it without being reactive, we have to align ourselves with the stillness and the calmness and the peace that we do try to cling to on a daily basis. And if you try to channel it or filter it through that versus the chaos, because if you're seeing it in its chaos, you have usually no filter in the moment, but to take a second and detach and then try and filter it through your prayer model, your mindfulness, or whatever it is you choose to do, it usually gives you a 50,000-foot view of the situation. Like, okay, here's what that really is, and here's how I'm going to address that because here's what's important to me. Spend more time doing the things you enjoy. We talked about that a lot. Definitely a way to respond to burnout. Take a vacation. Do you have even apply for a DEI day? 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever the case, and just go fishing, go, walking, hike. Yes, whatever you do. And then view the situation as a challenge. I mean, that's a way to reframe it. That's one of the more mature ways to do it. Everything we do, I believe, is going to test where we are and where we need more maturity or learning or growth. Yeah. And so oftentimes I fail and I'm like, okay, I didn't get that. So like, let me try it again. Try it again. So, using it as a challenge to be like, okay, I know this is trying to see where I am now. So where are you, Tanesha? So yeah, those are just some options. And then workplace burnout causes and solutions. We talked about this and we talked about it from a place of individuals and organizations. Being a manager or a supervisor comes with responsibilities, but unless you've been on the other side within the past year, you probably are removed from how it feels to be on the other side. And I say this all the time, like Karlyn and I were nurses and now we're nurse practitioners. And we haven't been nurses for quite a while, although I still work somewhat as a nurse, but not on the floor. So there are some things now that 5 years ago I could say it in an acronym, algorithm, alphabetical order. Now it's sort of slow. Like I can probably, but
Mhm.
I'm removed from it because I don't do it very often anymore. I was like one of the best cardiac nurses out. Not anymore. That's not my lane anymore. So, in order to understand what cardiac nurses do now in 2025, I got to ask questions, or either I have to engulf myself in that environment because I'm seeing it from a practitioner, which is a mid level with nursing experience prior. So, causes typically of workplace burnout is unfair treatment or partial treatment, unrealistic, unmanageable workload, poor communication from management, or lack of experience from management, lack of managerial presence or support, stressful time and quota expectations, which I heard someone saying earlier today. All of those things can make you crazy if, like, they're not addressed and you're like skating on thin ice and you don't understand what your role is because you keep getting, redirected here, redirected there. And it's like, okay, what am I really supposed to be doing? So I mentioned in the latter part of this slide to ask for help or ask for clarity is nothing like clarity. I think understanding what you're doing and knowing what you're doing is the best thing. That's one thing that I think our league of nurses or our league of practice is based on. Like I need to know like what I'm doing and make sure that I'm doing it correctly.
Mhm.
Prioritize your day, week, month with check-in. So if you said you were gonna go to the movies once this week, work out twice, like do a check-in. Did you do it? Was it a reasonable reason why you didn't? And that's okay. But to check in and hold yourself accountable is important as well. Champion a merit or appreciation program. So at one of the employers I go to now, we incorporated a birthday party. So all the employees get a birthday. I started doing like a raffle for some of the birthdays. And then we did like a tea exchange. So, like people who drink tea, you bring up tea and you take one. Just little things to make it more personable and build the morale. And you can even do that with permission, I imagine, from your employer. You can also think about how you navigated similar events. We mentioned that earlier. Take your break seriously. We mentioned that as well. Plan your annual review. So when you're going in for your annual evaluation, and you feel like, and I won't even say feel like, you've documented where you're doing more work now than when you were hired and you were hired for $5 an hour. Okay, now I'm doing $10 an hour of work. Document that. And then when you go in for your annual review, you say to the employer very, very directly, here's what you hired me for. Here's what I've accomplished. Here's what I did within that year. In addition to, here's what I've been doing, blah, 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 blah. And then here's the pay that I think would be sufficient to support my efforts and my, repertoire since being here. I think that incentivizes a person because of the work that they've invested. And speak up. I'm a avid champion for speaking up for yourself. Discuss barriers. If they're saying, oh, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you have to speak up and tell them, I'm not, because you're giving me unmanageable, unexpected, unreasonable workloads within this time frame, and I'm going to need more time to do this. I can do this within this, and I can do that within that. And if not, I'm going to need help.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of those are just solutions that I strongly suggest and I take for myself too.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot when I was kind of going over information that a lot of employees felt also like a lack of control. So I think with, like you're saying, having a clear, defined role, discussing your barriers, discussing your boundaries definitely brings back some of that control that you can have within the workplace as well.
For sure.
Okay, so we're gonna shift a little bit to PTSD. According to the Mayo Clinic, post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition that's caused by an extremely stressful or terrifying event, either being part of it or witnessing it. Some symptoms that are included with PTSD include flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, uncontrollable thoughts about the event, negative thinking, negative self-thought about the events or trauma, things like that. Some causes to PTSD include prior history of trauma, and the severity and frequency of events, perceived lack of support following the event, childhood adversity and trauma, just being a female, very traumatic sometimes. Being part of marginalized groups, Black people, of course, we have our own PTSD within this country, and in this systemic system here, LGBTQ, basically anybody, any minority group, can definitely experience PTSD, whether acute or chronically. In immigration status, as you see with all things that are going on now with ICE and deportations and everything like that, that's definitely, I think, going to have an increased rise of people experiencing PTSD and mental health disorders, of course, and war. People in the military, those that have been in combat, definitely experience PTSD and have reliving different traumatic events. So there's four main types of PTSD, how they present to others, or they present in general, shall I say. So one is intrusion. So basically when you have like intrusive thoughts, it's unwarranted, distressing thoughts. You constantly thinking about these horrible memories or reliving these horrible events over and over again, but you can't stop yourself. That's the first type. The second type is avoidance, and that's basically where you are avoiding a specific place or a person that may trigger these outbursts or these symptoms that you may have with PTSD. You're staying away, you're not trying to think about it, so you're literally avoiding the event, the stress episode. The third type is changes in cognition and mood. So with that, you'll see maybe you're having memory lapses, you're having negative self-thought, negative self-talk, you're losing interest, you're numbed, you have numb emotions, you're not feeling anything. These are changes within your cognition and mood that you may see with PTSD. So if you see somebody that's kind of always forgetting things, or there's a specific time that they've forgotten about that's related maybe to this event, they could be in that type of category. Changes in reactivity, um, changes in physicalness, that maybe the patient or the person is easily startled, maybe they're more irritable, they're having these angry outbursts. You can also see people with trouble concentrating, having sleep disturbances, or they're just overall guarded. They're not very vulnerable. They're not open. They don't want to talk to you. You may see these changes in somebody with PTSD. And to be diagnosed with PTSD, usually these symptoms have to be ongoing for about over a month. So anything before that, it could be just an acute disorder, maybe stress or anxiety. But once it goes over a month, now you're crossing over to post-traumatic stress disorder. And some of the ways that we manage PTSD include cognitive behavior therapy, which is like your psychotherapy, your group talks, anything like that. Pharmacological, you may need somebody with PTSD may need medications to help with nightmares. You may need medications such as antidepressives or antipsychotics for those that may start hallucinating in more severe cases. And then they're now starting to do research with more alternative medicines, such as cannabis and psychedelics, to help with those outbursts and changes in perception and reality. Um, and you can also try yoga, mindfulness, acupuncture. These are all different ways that, as Tanesha expressed earlier, that we can kind of get back to reality where we're more mindful and present in ourselves, present in our movements and our body. And then that's very important for those with PTSD because as you see, there can be changes in their cognition and mood and avoiding certain things. So you want to bring them back to reality. You want to come back and have slow movements and have ways to channel their stress, channel their emotions more positively. Animal assisted therapy, we know somebody with a service dog, and those are very beneficial. Again, sometimes people feel alone or they're avoiding certain people or certain places. So having that support with an animal is beneficial in that and can also just help with good, happy energy and hormone. Yeah. Um, and then, like I said earlier, group support, peer support groups. If you're having like substance use issues related to PTSD, it's good to definitely have somebody to talk to, or there are also veteran groups with the VA that people go and seek out that also, so you can just have somebody that's a part, that have been a part of the traumatic events and can understand, there's not a lot of people that can understand war times. There's not a lot of people that can understand what it's like to be a healthcare provider. There's, especially during COVID, that PTSD numbers increases. A lot of mental health disorders increase with COVID. So there's different support groups out there. And then as we touched base earlier, seeking your spiritual advisor, pastors, counselors, whoever you look for to guidance and just to to have that uplifting support is, definitely integral to prevention of the PTSD and management and coping strategies, just an overall in for any mental health disorders. Also of note with PTSD, sometimes they disassociate. So, sometimes like that means they don't feel like they're in their body or they're feeling outside of reality. So again, we need ways to kind of bring them down and to just have them more present within themselves. And for this page, this is just a mental health resources page where again you can call 988 to reach any suicide or crisis life to reach the suicide and crisis lifeline. If you're a veteran or a active service member, they have their own special crisis hotline for that as well, or you can also chat online. The suicide and lifeline crisis lifeline also has a Spanish language phone. You can go on different governmental websites, find support, or different um, agencies to help with finding support treatment options, or if you're looking for substance abuse treatment options, they're also out there as well.
I added this gentleman because he just looks like where everybody needs to be at the end of every day. But understand your strengths and your challenges. I've come to understand that some people have more execution strengths. Like when it's go time, they are the person. They don't know how to relax. They don't know how to unplug. They don't know how to unwind. um, Performance is their residence. And I know some people are more social, so they don't know when to stop and take care of themselves because that's just their love language or their personality primarily. And then I know other people who are non-confrontation are very timid when it comes to being assertive, and they're just quite passive. And so that can also be very um, unhelpful when it comes to speaking up for yourself because they don't feel the courage to do that without, having a reason that that's not what they want to do. So understanding like, okay, I don't feel comfortable saying this. So how can I get my point across without, you know, self-abandoning or you know, compromising what I know I earned because I don't feel comfortable going to my manager saying, well, I deserve a raise. Like, don't you see what I've been doing this whole time? Um, or those people who have people around that say, okay, girl, you've been going like you work 10 shifts. You know, you need to like take a break. Like having that, understanding that about yourself and having the people who you entrust around you to be able to give you an objective word of wisdom or encouraging word or even a word of redirection. Like I plenty of my friends are just like, girl, you do like a lot. So having those people and the self-awareness to know your strengths and your challenges. I know that about myself. I know that I do a lot of things. So sometimes I'll just write on my calendar rest day. That way I know not to take any engagement, not to sign up for an extra shift, not to agree to do anything. Often we take on too much at work and at home and suffer in silence,
Yes.
or we reflect on it, right? So it's like, because I know, Karlyn, you could probably like say more about it, but imagine a parent or mother, because mothers are just priceless, like fathers, although mothers mostly spend a lot of time with infants or toddlers. So imagine you signing up for 10 shifts, and then, of course, who's going to suffer? It's like imagine you saying yes to everything someone asks you, and then you're not the only one who's going to feel the remnants of your overexertion, like other people do too. So the projection of your, burnout and stress, it doesn't just affect me, like it's going to affect other people as well. Um, Take your time when life is stressful outside of work. So you do have to do that. Like that's something that, again, it's go mode, be productive, I'm booked and busy, like just relax. Like, like it's okay to do that. Find the balance, I think is my message. And it can easily spill into your job and onto your coworkers, your family members, your children, my
Physical.
patients. Yes. Yeah. And your physical. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all,
You
yeah.
can talk a little bit more about that too, because holistically.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely everything that we talked about as far as like burnout and being stressed from work definitely can present physically. It can affect, increase your risk for heart or cardiovascular diseases.
Yes.
It can, like I said, memory issue, cognition issues. You're gonna have musculoskeletal back pains and headaches. There's an increased risk of also cancers and GI stomach ulcers. Working nights, you have impaired immunity. So if you're working long hours, not sleeping, not resting, not eating, your immune system takes a hit, like an irritability. So all these things, not only affect your mental health, but we definitely want to drive to the point that it definitely affects your physical health. So take care of both.
Yes. Yes. And self check-ins are necessary. So again, going to your primary care or your therapist is important, and as well as more check-ins frequently with yourself so that you hold yourself accountable for your own health and your own health holistically, as Karlyn mentioned, your physical health, your mental health, your family structure, your spiritual health. You have to check in with yourself because, you can put a car on the road and fill it up with gas and it's going to run well and it's oiled, but keep going and just see, there's no way it's going to not run out of something
It's
and
gonna
need
stop
maintenance.
you.
Like everything needs maintenance, everything. Children, our cars, our clothes, you got to do laundry at some point. You're going to run out of clothes. Like you can't, like everything, including us, need maintenance. So it's just very important. And yeah, that's just one of the things that I think stress often manifests itself as these other conditions that we treat every day: high cholesterol, high, you know, high blood pressure, diabetes. Like stress made you eat, stress made you smoke, stress made you, all of these things are secondary to what we're talking about today. I believe that if more people got their stress under control and their coping mechanisms under control. And which is why we lean more into the mental wellness and the holistic health. Usually, if those things are very well maintenance and balance, because yes, you're going to eat french fries, but like all the time though, like get a balance in those areas and you won't see as much obesity, you won't see as much depression, you won't see as much high cholesterol and poor blood circulation, all these things, like because there's a balance and you're not smoking, there isn't as much lung cancer because those compulsions and those obsessions, those thoughts are, mitigated or addressed by doing the things we've mentioned today. So,
Yep. Any questions? Anything that anyone has to say? Oh, here are our references. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And here's again our social, oops, sorry, I have the chat open. Our social media information, YouTube channels, websites. So please take a look at further events. Anything that we're doing will be posted there. Any blogs or videos, resources as well.
I do have a question.
Yes.
If we're talking about mental health, mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
does a person know they have it?
Not all the time.
So how can you help that person if they don't know they have a mental health issue?
Did you want to take?
oh, sure. Yeah. Yep. So I always start with, is there a self-injury, self-harm, or safety concern?
Now, supposing they say that I'm going to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, if they just blatantly said that.
yeah, they just blatantly said that. Right?
Okay.
They have they have a need, and then they say, "Well, I'm just, I'm going to commit suicide," to a person. How would you do that? I mean, how do you help them?
Okay, first thing is to get as much information as you can and then to stay aware of the surroundings. So, does this person have a means to commit suicide? That's the first thing. And if they do have a means to commit suicide, then I usually say go ahead and call 988 and 911. I would call 988, either way, you could do either one, but definitely call 911 or 988, but call them both. And try to have someone call while you keep the person engaged and to get as much information from the person as possible. I think having a conversation and not like going to the extreme of, better than that. And, if you kill yourself, ain't no coming back from that. And, instead of giving the obvious, sort of do the reverse psychology and have a conversation. So let's talk, like, how, did something happen? Like, tell me about it. Maybe I felt that way too before. Maybe I know somebody who felt like that before too. I think having a conversation, unless the person's like standing there with a knife, because that's a different conversation. Even then, you still want to try and talk to the person. But if it's and do you know what age this person was, or is this hypothetical? Oh, you're muted too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Hypothetical.
Okay, so I say in the manner of a teenager, and this is not an end all be all. Like nothing I say is an end all be all because every situation is different. A lot of teens say and do have behaviors that indicate intent. And I say this with all hypothetical pretenses. Usually it's a cry for attention or help. Unless, again, they're standing there with a gun or a knife, then you can throw that explanation out because that doesn't make sense. But if it is someone who is just saying it without a means, and this is, is no dire access to a gun or access to a knife or access to walking out and jumping off of whatever, then a conversation to get to the bottom of, where's this coming from? Tell me a little bit more about it. I perhaps know somebody you could talk to, and give them a sort of a undertow or like a passive out. Because usually if I'm telling you, I probably don't want to do it. I probably want an out or I want something else. Does that make sense?
I think, yeah, and I think the end all would be definitely seeking professional help and resources, whether that is the crisis hotline,
Mhm.
whether that is getting a therapist or a psychologist, somebody on board so that they have this outlet to have these discussions and talks in a controlled environment.
Right? And I suppose they don't want to. They don't want
They
to seek
just,
professional
they
help. They
don't
just
want to,
saying it,
and they
maybe.
just, okay. Are they continuously saying it or is this the first time that they've said it?
I don't know.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it's very difficult if, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I just saying I don't know.
Okay, got it. Yes. So if they've said it one time and this is the first intro to saying it, it's and they're like, yes, no, I still would call the 988. It's almost like a person who has stroke symptoms, even though they may have like inability to speak or balance issues or their vision, they start to see the floaters in their vision and it goes away. Sometimes the damage is already done and you still need to call 911 or get them to the emergency room to do imaging because we can't see how much damage has been done. Whereas what Karlyn said, I think is true. So I would still call 988, especially if they don't have means to a gun or a knife or something detrimental, to at least get them in a setting to where they can be, number one, safe, and number two, what Karlyn said, like in the presence and the care of professionals. And if there's no self-harm, I think the rule is that they, in their sound mind, I don't think that they can be made to go unless there is a threat or a danger. But at least I would try to do what it is you can do. Obviously, in certain situations, you can't make the person, and that's okay too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments, questions?
I just want to compliment y'all on a job well done. I don't know if y'all helping anybody else, but y'all have helped me tremendously since y'all been coming on with your webinar. I'm traditionally old school, and so you know we look at people and we say, "Oh man, that old fool, man, not paying that fool no mind." But now I'm becoming more compassionate and understanding. You know, because so many people just like they say, "Oh, I'm this PT." Was it PT?
PTSD.
SD, PTSD, yeah. And I said, yeah, well, you don't come mess with me then, because I'm helping you out a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, but now you become understanding and a better understanding that this is for real, and people do suffer with some of this, and so we need to be trying to help them more, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I want to thank y'all, and y'all do a great job of explaining. This other talk about burnout and all that. You're 50 years too late for me. I'm retired, so I ain't burning out nowhere. But thank y'all. I appreciate it. I appreciate it, and I encourage y'all to continue to have these webinars so that we can gain more knowledge and insight. And you make it so clear. Sometimes people speak and you're more confused when you get off the webinar than when you got on, but y'all make it very clear, and I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we appreciate the time and the attention, and we definitely want to make sure it's attainable sustainable, like, and, realistic, that makes more sense. I've definitely went to presentations and they were it was just too much. Like, you're all over the place, and it's not relatable. So I am here with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, if that is it, thank you everybody for coming. And again, we'll try to be on it for next month as well. And if you have any topics, please let us know so that we can go over them, or any more questions or feedback. We're open.
Yes.
Great.
You.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good night.
You
Yeah.
too.
All right.
Good
Keep
night.
up the good work.
Thank
Thank
you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye.